The unexpected encounter, the snow fell gently on the quiet streets of downtown as David Martinez adjusted his expensive watch and sighed. Christmas Eve had always been difficult since his wife Maria passed away 2 years ago, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old daughter Sophia alone. His black Mercedes sat purring in the parking lot of Romano's. It's an upscale Italian restaurant where he'd just finished a lonely business dinner. "Papa, can we get ice cream?" Sophia asked from the back seat, her big brown eyes reflecting the twinkling Christmas lights that decorated every storefront. "It's getting late," Mia David replied softly, but her hopeful expression melted his resolve. "All right, 1 small cone." "Ah!" As he walked around the building, toward the ice cream shop next door, something caught his attention. Behind the restaurant's dumpster, a figure moved quietly in the shadows. David slowed his steps, his protective instincts kicking in as Sophia skipped ahead, humming a Christmas carol. The figure was a young woman, probably in her early 20s, wearing a thin jacket that looked insufficient against the December cold. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was carefully examining something she'd pulled from the restaurant's trash. "Sophia, wait by the car for a moment," David called out, his voice gentle but firm. He approached the woman slowly, not wanting to startle her. As he got closer, he could see she wasn't looking for valuables or anything typical. She was examining leftover food containers, opening them cautiously and sniffing the contents. "Excuse me," David said quietly. The woman jumped, nearly dropping the container in her hands. Her green eyes were wide with fear and embarrassment as she looked up at him. She was prettier than he'd first realized, with delicate features and skin that looked pale from hunger and cold. "I'm sorry I'm not causing trouble," she said quickly, her voice shaky. "I was just ... I'll leave." "Wait," David said, holding up his hand. "Are you looking for food?" The woman's cheeks flushed red. She clutched the container tighter, as if it were precious. "I'm not stealing anything. This is just ... leftovers that were thrown away." David felt something twist in his chest. This beautiful young woman was digging through garbage just to eat. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Emma." "Emma Wilson? I'm David. That's my daughter Sophia by the car." He gestured toward the little girl, who was now pressing her face against the passenger window, watching them with curious eyes. "When did you last have a real meal, Emma?" Emma's lower lip trembled slightly. "Yesterday, I think. Maybe the day before. Time gets fuzzy when you're..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "When you're hungry," David completed. Gently, she nodded, unable to meet his eyes. David made a decision that would change both their lives. "Come with us. Let's get you something warm to eat." "I can't," Emma protested. "I don't have money, and I don't accept charity. It's Christmas Eve," David said. "Consider it a gift. Besides, Sophia loves meeting new people, and honestly, I could use some adult conversation that doesn't involve quarterly reports." Emma looked at him skeptically. "You don't know me. It could be dangerous." David smiled for the first time that evening. "You're digging through trash for leftover pasta? I think I'll take my chances." After several minutes of gentle persuasion, Emma reluctantly agreed. As they walked toward the car, David noticed how she moved carefully, like someone accustomed to being invisible. Sophia bounced excitedly when she saw Emma approaching. "Papa, is this your friend?" Sophia asked in Spanish-accented English. "This is Emma," David replied. "She's going to have dinner with us. Yay, I love making new friends." Sophia clapped her hands together in the car. Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat while Sophia chattered nonstop from the back about everything. From her favorite Christmas movies to her pet hamster named Churro. David noticed how Emma's tense shoulders gradually relaxed as they drove through the decorated neighborhoods. "Where are we going?" Emma asked nervously as they pulled into the driveway of a large Mediterranean-style home. "Home," David said simply. "Don't worry, Emma, you're safe." Inside the warm house, Emma stood awkwardly in the marble foyer, looking around at the expensive furnishings and family photos lining the walls. David could see her taking in every detail, probably wondering what she'd gotten herself into. "The kitchen's this way," he said, leading them through the living room decorated with a massive Christmas tree in the spacious kitchen. David opened the refrigerator and gestured broadly. "Make yourself at home. There's plenty of everything." approached the fridge cautiously, as if the abundance of food was something she couldn't quite trust. She pulled out ingredients slowly: eggs, cheese, some leftover vegetables, bread. "I could make us something," she offered quietly. "I used to cook professionally. Before... Before what?" David asked gently. Emma's hand stilled on the egg carton. "Before I lost everything. Before I ended up on the streets." Without another word, she began cooking. David watched in amazement as Emma transformed his kitchen. Her movements were fluid and confident, completely different from the hesitant woman he'd found behind the dumpster. She diced onions with perfect precision, whisked eggs into golden fluff, and seasoned everything with an intuitive touch that spoke of real training and natural talent. The aroma that filled the kitchen was incredible. Even Sophia, who was typically picky about food, stood transfixed by the delicious smells. When Emma placed the plates on the table, David took his first bite and nearly dropped his fork. The omelet was perfect, restaurant quality, with layers of flavor that spoke of someone who truly understood food. "This is extraordinary," he said, meeting Emma's eyes. "You really were a professional chef." Emma smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "I went to culinary school, worked in some good restaurants, had dreams of opening my own place someday." "What happened?" David asked softly. The smile faded from Emma's face. "Life happened. Bad choices, worse luck, and a series of events that led me from having everything to having nothing. Lost my apartment, my job, my savings. It's amazing how quickly you can fall when you don't have anyone to catch you." David felt a deep empathy for this young woman. He remembered his own struggles in the early days of building his tech company. The nights he'd eaten nothing but ramen noodles and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake leaving his corporate job. "Sometimes we all need someone to catch us," he said quietly. After dinner, Emma insisted on cleaning the dishes, moving around his kitchen like she belonged there. Sophia had curled up on the living room couch, fighting sleep as Christmas specials played on the television. "I should go," Emma said finally, drying the last plate. "Thank you for the meal and the kindness. I won't forget it." "Where will you go?" David asked. Emma shrugged. "There's a shelter downtown that might have space. If not, I'll find somewhere." David looked at this talented, dignified woman who'd been reduced to sleeping in shelters and eating from dumpsters. He thought about his empty house, about Sophia's excited chatter during dinner, about how alive his kitchen had felt with someone cooking in it again. "Stay," he said suddenly. Emma froze. "What?"
That.
"Stay here tonight. It's Christmas Eve. It's snowing, and you've already made this house feel more like home than it has in 2 years." David ran a hand through his dark hair. "I have plenty of room, and Sophia clearly adores you." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. You don't even know me." "I know you're kind, talented, and that you needed help tonight. Sometimes that's enough." David's brown eyes were earnest. "Besides, it's Christmas. No one should be alone on Christmas." As if to emphasize his point, Sophia's sleepy voice called from the living room. "Emma, will you read me a story?" Emma looked toward the little girl, then back at David. For a moment, he saw something vulnerable and hopeful flash across her face before she quickly suppressed it. "Just for tonight," she whispered. "Just for tonight," David agreed, though something in his heart hoped it might be longer, as Emma tucked Sophia into bed and read her a Christmas story. David stood in the doorway watching them. His daughter hadn't smiled this much since Maria died, and there was something about Emma that brought warmth back into their home. He had no idea that this chance encounter on Christmas Eve would change all their lives forever, or that the homeless woman he'd found behind a dumpster would become the missing piece his family had been searching for. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in pristine white, as if nature itself was preparing a clean slate for new beginnings. The transformation, the morning sunlight streaming through the guest bedroom windows, woke Emma gently. For a moment, she lay still, disoriented by the softness of clean sheets and the warmth surrounding her. Then reality crashed back. She was in David Martinez's home, sleeping in a bed that probably cost more than she'd made in her last month of employment. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. What had she been thinking? Accepting his offer to stay. This wasn't her world. She needed to leave before she became too comfortable, before the inevitable disappointment set in. Emma quietly gathered her few belongings, a worn backpack containing everything she owned, and crept toward the door. She paused at the sound of voices drifting up from the kitchen below. Sophia's bright laughter mixed with David's deeper chuckles, and the domestic warmth of it made her chest ache with longing. "Emma," Sophia's voice called out suddenly. "Are you awake? Papa's trying to make pancakes, but they look like monsters." Emma closed her eyes, knowing she'd been caught. She couldn't slip away now without hurting the little girl's feelings. Reluctantly, she made her way downstairs, her backpack still clutched in her hands. In the kitchen, she found David standing over the stove with a bewildered expression, holding a spatula like it had personally offended him. The griddle was covered with misshapen burnt pancakes that did indeed resemble creatures from a horror movie. "Good morning," David said, his cheeks slightly red with embarrassment. "I thought I'd attempt breakfast, but apparently my culinary skills are more limited than I realized." Sophia giggled from her perch at the kitchen island. "Emma, can you fix Papa's monster pancakes?" "I should really go," Emma said softly, shifting her backpack. "Thank you for everything, but I don't want to overstay my welcome." David's expression fell slightly. "You're not overstaying anything. Besides, it's Christmas morning. Sophia was hoping you'd help her open her presents." "Presents?" Emma looked confused. "Santa came," Sophia announced excitedly. "And he left something for you too." "That's impossible," Emma whispered. "Santa doesn't know where I am." David moved closer, his voice gentle. "Maybe he asked me for help this year." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. No one had given her a Christmas present in 3 years, not since she lost touch with her family after a bitter argument about her life choices. She set down her backpack with trembling hands. "Just breakfast then," she murmured. "Then I really should go." But breakfast turned into Emma rescuing David's pancake disaster, creating perfect golden circles that made Sophia clap with delight. The little girl chattered constantly about Christmas traditions while Emma worked, and David found himself mesmerized by the way Emma moved in his kitchen, confident, graceful, completely at home after breakfast. They moved to the living room, where Sophia's presents waited under the enormous tree. Emma sat quietly on the couch, feeling like an intruder in this intimate family moment, until Sophia thrust a small wrapped box into her hands. "This one's yours," Sophia announced. Emma's hands shook as she unwrapped the gift. Yes. Inside was a beautiful, leather-bound notebook with recipes and dreams embossed in gold on the cover. She opened it to find the first page filled with David's neat handwriting. "For someone who creates magic with simple ingredients, may this book hold all your future dreams." "I noticed you didn't have anywhere to write down your recipes," David explained quietly. "Every chef needs a place to capture their inspiration." Emma couldn't speak. She clutched the notebook to her chest as tears rolled down her cheeks. It had been so long since someone had seen her as more than just another homeless person to avoid or pity. "Thank you," she whispered finally. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." The rest of Christmas Day passed in a blur of warmth and laughter. Emma found herself relaxing despite her intentions to leave. She helped Sophia with her new puzzle, laughed at David's terrible jokes, and even shared stories about her culinary school days. When evening came, David didn't ask her to leave, and she didn't offer to go. Days turned into a week. Emma made herself useful around the house, cooking meals that made David close his eyes in appreciation, and Sophia asked for seconds and thirds. She organized the pantry with professional efficiency, taught Sophia how to crack eggs without getting shells everywhere, slowly began to feel like she belonged somewhere again. David watched this transformation with growing amazement. Scared, defensive woman he'd found behind the dumpster was revealing herself to be brilliant, funny, and incredibly resilient. She had Sophia laughing at breakfast with her impressions of cooking show hosts, and she'd turned his sterile kitchen into the warm heart of their home. But it was the quiet moments that affected him most. The way Emma unconsciously hummed while she cooked, how she listened to Sophia's endless chatter with genuine interest, the careful way she touched his expensive belongings, as if she couldn't quite believe she was allowed to be there. One evening, As Emma prepared dinner, David found the courage to ask the question that had been weighing on him. What really happened, Emma? How did someone with your talent end up on the streets? Emma's hand stilled on the onion she was dicing. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then slowly, she began to speak. I was head chef at a trendy restaurant downtown. Nouveau Cuisine? Maybe you've heard of it? When David nodded, she continued. I was 24, successful, making good money. I had a boyfriend, Marcus, who was also in the industry, food critic for the city magazine. She resumed chopping, her movements sharp and precise. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building a life together, and I found out he was writing scathing reviews of my restaurant while pretending to support me. He was sabotaging my career to advance his own, using insider information I'd shared with him to tear apart my dishes in print. David felt anger rising in his chest. That's despicable. When I confronted him, he turned it around on me, said I was paranoid, unstable. He went to my boss with stories about my mental health, my supposed drug problem, all lies. But he was convincing, and I was just the chef. They believed him. Emma's voice grew quieter. I was fired, blacklisted in the industry. Marcus made sure word spread that I was unreliable, dangerous to work with. No restaurant would hire me. My savings ran out. I couldn't make rent. And when I reached out to my family for help, they didn't believe you? They believed Marcus. He was charming, successful, from a good family. I was just the daughter who'd always been too independent, too stubborn. They said I'd made my bed and had to lie in it. God. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. 6 months later, I was living in my car. 2 months after that, I didn't even have that. David moved closer, wanting to comfort her but unsure how. Emma, I'm so sorry. The worst part wasn't being homeless, she continued. It was losing myself. I stopped believing I was worth anything. Started thinking maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was the problem. You're not the problem, David said firmly. You're one of the most talented, caring people I've ever met. Emma looked at him with wonder, as if she couldn't quite believe his words. How can you be so sure? You barely know me. I know you turn simple ingredients into magic. I know you make my daughter laugh like her mother used to. I know you've brought life back into this house. David stepped closer. And I know that anyone who could do what Marcus did to you isn't worthy of cleaning your shoes, let alone sharing your life. Something shifted in Emma's expression. The walls she'd built around herself began to crumble, and David could see the vibrant, confident woman she'd once been fighting to resurface. I have an idea, he said suddenly. What if you didn't have to work for someone else? What if you could open your own place? Emma laughed bitterly. With what? I don't have money, credit, or even proper identification anymore. Most of my documents were stolen months ago. I have money, David said simply, and I have connections. What you have is talent and heart, and maybe we could be partners. Emma stared at him in shock. You can't be serious. I've been looking for a good investment opportunity. Food service is booming, especially if you know what you're doing, what you obviously do. David's business mind was already working. We could start small, maybe a catering company or a food truck. Build up capital and reputation, then eventually open a restaurant. David, you don't understand. I'm nobody. I'm homeless. I'm your extraordinary, he interrupted. What? And you're not homeless anymore. Not if you don't want to be. Emma felt her world tilting. This man was offering her everything she'd lost and more, a chance to rebuild, to dream again. But the scared part of her, the part that had learned to expect disappointment, whispered warnings. What if I fail? What if I let you down? David smiled, the same gentle expression he wore when reassuring Sophia, then we try again. That's what partners do. From the living room, Sophia's voice called out, Emma, can you help me with my new cookbook? I want to make cookies like you. Emma looked toward the sound of the little girl's voice, then back at David's hopeful face. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't involve just surviving day to day. Partners, she whispered. Partners, David confirmed, extending his hand. As Emma shook it, she felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Hope. Not just hope for a meal or a warm place to sleep, but hope for a real life, a real future. Hope for love, family, and dreams coming true. Outside, snow began to fall again, but inside David's house, Emma finally felt warm all the way through. The scared young woman who'd been digging through garbage just a week ago was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone ready to fight for the life she deserved. And she wouldn't be fighting alone anymore.